Let her rise on her own. Once upright, she held her hands out again, unthreatening. "Follow me," he said. He led her to an old maintenance bunker half submerged in debris, barely visible behind a ridge of rock. The entry hatch was dented but functional. He pried it open and gestured for her to enter. Inside, the air was dry and stale. The lights flickered but held. A narrow room with a rusted bench, a cracked heater, and a first aid kit torn in half. It was enough. For now. Sit down. She obeyed without a word. Her hands rested in her lap. She didn't look at him, but she wasn't trying to hide her face either. Ryan shut the door and turned the manual seal. Then he removed his helmet. Sweat trickled down his face, his brown hair damp. He set the helmet down and looked at her again. Really looked. She was young, maybe his age. The faint markings along her jaw were cultural, not combat-related. Her breathing was uneven. Dehydration. Minor injuries. No immediate threat. The surface of Velcaris was dead. What was once a tactical base of the Alvarii Dominion had become a wasteland of scorched rock, mangled ships, and carbonized bodies. The air was thin, dry, bitter with the scent of superheated metal and vaporized organic matter. The twin suns had passed overhead, but the heat still radiated from the blackened soil. Smoke rose in columns from fractured hulls. Static crackled in the distance, where fires continued to eat through broken modules. Commander Ryan Hale, 34, Earth Federation Marine Corps, Recon Unit, stood alone among the remains of a massacre. His black armor, battered, carbon-scarred, was the only sign of movement on the horizon. A deep cut ran across the right side of his helmet. A fragment from the drop pod impact had nearly taken his eye. He hadn't slept in 2 days. His rations were gone. His only water came from salvaged survival packs. But he was alive. Ryan stood instantly, grabbing his rifle. The signal was faint, moving southwest. Slow. Human or Averii, he couldn't tell at this range. Could have been a drone, but the heat signature looked organic. Alone. "Stay here," he said sharply. "No." He turned. "You're injured. You'll slow me down. If you die out there, I die in here. Let me help." He didn't argue further. She was right. They geared up quickly. He gave her a small sidearm. Non-lethal, 2 shots. Just in case. She didn't thank him. Just nodded. They exited the bunker through the collapsed service shaft, climbing through broken supports and jagged rebar. The surface air was clearer now, the wind having swept most of the ash away. The horizon stretched barren and lifeless, the skeletal remains of gunships casting long shadows. They moved carefully. Ryan took point, Syraxa behind him, limping slightly but determined to keep up. Within minutes, the scanner narrowed the source, 50 meters ahead, near a downed Federation recon craft. Smoke still hissed from its bent turbine. No movement yet. Then sound. A cough. Ryan raised his rifle and edged forward. Behind a fragment of hull plating, a wounded Federation scout lay half-conscious, a deep gash across his abdomen, suit torn and soaked in blood. His helmet was missing. His eyes fluttered open when Ryan knelt. "Ale." Ryan froze. He recognized the voice. Corporal Juno Vance, one of the 3 pod survivors. "I thought you were dead," Ryan said. Vance chuckled weakly, then winced. "Almost. Woke up here. Couldn't move." Ryan began assessing the wound. It was bad, too deep for the medkit to fix. He injected a stabilizer. Syraxa stepped forward. The moment Vance saw her, his expression changed. "What the hell is that thing doing with you?" he snapped. "She's not a threat. She's Dominion. She's not armed. Not fighting. She's bait," Vance growled. Silence returned, broken only by the whine of overheated rifle coils. Ryan leaned against the exterior wall, catching his breath. Syraxa joined him, a gash across her shoulder, leaking thin blood. "You hit. Glancing shot," she said. "I've had worse." "You sure?" "I'm standing." He pulled her behind the wall and took a breath. "They'll be back," she said. "I know. Your people." "How long to arrive?" "If the signal went through clean, maybe 3 hours." "4 max." Syraxa nodded. "Then we hold." She slumped against the wall beside him, eyes scanning the perimeter. "No panique." No self-pity, just readiness. Ryan reloaded his rifle and glanced at her again. You fight like someone who's led troops before. I have. And lost them. Yes. He nodded, then looked away. Same. They sat in silence for a while, both watching the horizon. It wasn't camaraderie yet, but it was something closer than hostility. They were no longer two sides of a war. You sleep there. I'll keep watch. You think I'm a threat? I think you're desperate. That makes you unpredictable. She didn't argue. She laid back, carefully, and winced as her legs settled into place. For a few minutes, the only sound was her breathing. Then she spoke again. When I said I'd warm your bed, I wasn't trying to manipulate you. He didn't respond. I just didn't want to die, she said, almost in a whisper. And I didn't know what you'd understand. He stayed silent a while longer before finally speaking. Don't make promises you don't want to keep. I didn't say I didn't want to. The air in the bunker shifted slightly. He turned toward her, but her eyes were already closed. She was asleep. He leaned back against the wall, his weapon across his lap. She wasn't an enemy anymore, but that didn't mean she was a friend. Not yet. And Ryan Hale wasn't ready to let his guard down, no matter how human she sounded in the dark. Her survival could change everything politically, tactically. Ryan's mind raced. Protocol said, detain, restrain, extract. Reality said, he was alone, deep behind what was left of enemy lines, and he had nowhere to take her. Why are you here? He asked. She answered softly. I was attending a war summit. I never made it to the shuttle. Ryan looked around. Still no other life signs. It was just the two of them. She'd stayed behind, or had been left behind. He didn't lower the rifle. What did you mean, warm my bed? He asked flatly. Her eyes darkened with shame, but her voice didn't break. I mean what I said. If that keeps me alive, I'll do it. Ryan stared at her, emotions battling in his chest, distrust, confusion, anger, and a sliver of something else. She wasn't fighting him. She wasn't trying to escape. She was waiting for him to decide her fate. Get up, he said finally. She struggled to stand. Her body shook. He moved forward instinctively, then stopped himself. The temperature inside the bunker had dropped. Thin layers of condensation clung to the metal walls. Ryan sat awake, back against the bulkhead, rifle across his knees, eyes half closed but still scanning the dark. Outside, the landscape remained silent. No patrols, no drones, just wind slicing through the dead canyons of Elcaris. Syraxa stirred in her sleep. A soft sound, half breath, half whimper, escaped her lips. Her brow tensed. She shifted her weight, flinching as her injured leg brushed the edge of the bench. Ryan didn't move to comfort her. He didn't know how, or if he should, but he watched, and he remembered what it felt like to dream of things you couldn't undo. They had made it through the first night. Barely. By morning, she sat up slowly, blinking against the dim light. Her body was stiff, her movements cautious. You didn't sleep, she said. I never do on foreign moons. You don't trust me. I don't trust anyone. Syraxa studied him for a few seconds. I have a plan, she said. There's a Dominion relay station 6 kilometers northeast. It was outside the initial blast radius. If it's intact, we could hijack the transmitter and signal both our fleets. Why would I risk letting you contact your people? Because I won't. Not directly. I'll show you how to patch into their network and mask your origin point. You can send an encrypted distress call to Earth Fleet Command. Ryan hesitated. And what do you get in return? An agreement. You send your message, and when your people arrive, I go with you. As a detainee, willingly. No resistance. No tricks. You're just going to hand yourself over? I'm already dead to the Dominion, she said simply. At least with you, I get to stay alive. Ryan narrowed his eyes. Why would you want to stay alive if it means living in a cage? Syraxa didn't answer right away. Because if I survive, I can still change something. Her voice wasn't hopeful, it was resolved. He couldn't read the expressions behind their helmets, but he knew the protocol. High-value enemy detainees didn't get guarantees, especially not when they were once considered propaganda tools. The comm crackled. Echo Recon, command acknowledges. Redirect evac dropship to coordinates 7 Gamma. Bring all survivors. Royal detainee will be processed at Fleet Intelligence. Ryan exhaled, slow and heavy. They were taking her alive. The soldier turned to Ryan. ETA, 5 minutes. Extraction confirmed. Saraxa didn't move. She waited. Ryan turned to her. That's your ride. I know. They stared at each other for a long second. She took a step closer, but didn't speak. The lead soldier approached Ryan. You'll need to submit a full report. There's going to be questions. There always are, Ryan said. When the dropship arrived, its engines roared across the silence of Valkyris. Its landing lights cut across the barren landscape like searchlights from another world. Ryan looked at the scanner. Still no movement. He turned back to her. We leave at nightfall. You carry supplies. I'll carry the rifle. I'll keep up. We'll see. They packed in silence. Ryan gave her a thermal jacket from a storage locker. She pulled it on over her tattered armor without a word. Before they left, Ryan crouched beside Vance. Your vitals are stable, but if I don't come back in 12 hours, you won't last. You understand? Vance blinked slowly. She's playing you. Maybe, Ryan said. But right now, she's the only one with a plan. He left him a sidearm, 2 cartridges, and sealed the door. Outside, the sky had shifted to deep violet. The second sun was low, casting long shadows over the broken ridges of Valkyris. The wind had died down, but the silence was still unnatural. No creatures, no drones, just the hum of dying machines in the distance. They moved quickly, Ryan leading, Saraxa just behind. She didn't complain. She didn't ask questions. After all the fire, ash, and fear, they had found something no one had expected. Not surrender, not victory, but survival. Together. And this time, no one had to die for it. It had one entrance, a clear view of the ridge, and enough scrap metal stack to create a crude barricade. Not ideal, but defensible. Saraxa sat across from him, resting against the cold wall. Her shoulder wound had stopped bleeding, but her skin was pale from exhaustion. She hadn't asked for help, and Ryan hadn't offered. But they both knew she was running on willpower alone. He broke the silence first. You knew we'd be followed. She nodded. Anything that sends a signal from Dominion Tech draws scavengers. Some of them monitor abandoned stations for weeks. Others intercept burst pings. You left that part out. You wouldn't have come. He gave a dry exhale, not quite a laugh. Maybe not. They sat in silence for another minute. Then Ryan spoke again. You said you were born through genetic fusion. What does that actually mean? She looked at him, face unreadable in the dim light. I'm part bioengineered. She hadn't moved much since drinking the water capsule. Her posture remained controlled, upright, but her muscles trembled occasionally from fatigue or pain. Ryan had spent enough time in war zones to know when someone was broken. She wasn't. Hurt, yes. Scared, absolutely. But not broken. Are you injured anywhere else? He asked finally. She looked up. My leg, the left one, burned when the shuttle frame collapsed. I wrapped it, but the heat fused the wrap. Let me see it. She hesitated, then nodded. Slowly, she pulled up the ragged fabric covering her thigh. Her skin was discolored, purple and gray from internal bruising, and a long, shallow burn ran down her calf. The field dressing was melted into the wound. Ryan winced. You should have passed out from the pain by now. I almost did. Twice. He retrieved what was left of the medkit. There wasn't much. 2 vials of coagulant, a dermal patch, a cauterizer, and a syringe of general pain suppressor. He tossed her a water capsule. She caught it with both hands. Drink. She did. Slow, careful sips. Ryan sat across from her, his rifle within reach. You don't have to offer yourself to survive, he said after a moment. She looked up. I wasn't sure what else would matter to a human soldier. He didn't answer. He didn't know what to say. For now, she was his prisoner. But something told him this wasn't going to stay that simple. She had lost everything. So had he. And now, in the middle of a burned-out moon with no backup, no orders, and no escape plan, both of them had to figure out if they were enemies or just 2 survivors trying not to die alone. The silence inside the bunker was oppressive. A soft hum came from the overhead light panel, but it did little to warm the cold, stagnant air. Ryan sat on the edge of a dented supply crate, elbows on his knees, eyes fixed on the woman sitting across from him. Princess Syraxa of the Averii Dominion. And he had orders: survive, recon, confirm Dominion losses, and, if possible, secure any high-value intel or prisoners. His boots crunched over shattered alloy plating as he moved across the rubble. Around him, Averii soldiers lay in twisted heaps. Some still gripped weapons melted into their fingers. Others had been caught mid-run, incinerated by orbital fire. The Earth Federation had deployed a full kinetic strike here, assuming it was a command node. It had worked too well. Ryan's pod was one of 3 that made it to the ground intact. The others were gone. No signals, no movement. He scanned the wreckage again. Nothing, just the sound of wind brushing over steel and the occasional groan of shifting debris. Then movement. His HUD flickered. A soft ping. One heat signature, faint. Ahead, near a collapsed transport craft. He crouched behind the remains of an Averii assault platform, raised his rifle, and zoomed in. Through the scorched air and curling smoke, he saw her. She was kneeling. Not hiding, not running. Kneeling. At first glance, she looked like a civilian, unarmed, shaken, covered in dust. But Ryan recognized the armor fragments. Ceremonial. Averii elite. Thin shoulder guards, gilded trim, no weapon mounts. Her long silver hair hung in clumps, soaked in blood and soot. Her skin, blue-gray with an almost silvery sheen, was smudged with dirt. Her back was straight, but her head was slightly bowed. Her hands were raised in surrender. Ryan tightened his grip on the trigger. His heart pounded. He stepped closer cautiously. One wrong move, and she could have a plasma charge hidden under her arm. But she didn't flinch. She didn't move. She just breathed. Shallow, quick breaths like she was bracing for the end. "Stand down," he barked. Her head rose slowly. Her eyes met his visor. Bright teal, wide, alert but not defiant. "Scared," she spoke. Her voice was shaky, accented, but fluent in Terran standard. "Please don't kill me." He exhaled, tired of questioning his own decisions. "Because I've seen enough people die." That answer wasn't good enough, for him, or for her. He knew that, but it was the truth he could live with for now. He walked back to the door and manually secured the hatch. Outside, the environment was still unstable. Radiation readings were low, but the air carried too much ash to risk staying exposed long. This bunker wasn't ideal, but it was defensible. No power grid, no comms, no obvious heat signature. They had a few hours, maybe a day, before patrols came sniffing around. As he turned back, he saw her watching him closely. "You're alone," she said. "Yeah. What happened to the others?" "My unit was down on entry. Only 3 pods landed. I haven't found the others. I don't think I will." "Then why are you still searching?" Ryan didn't answer immediately. He sat down again. "I was trained to finish the mission. I don't know what the mission is anymore." He glanced at her, then knelt beside her leg. "This is going to hurt." "I know." He cut through the fused wrap and worked quickly, flushing the wound with what sterile gel remained. Her body jerked slightly at the first touch, but she didn't cry out. She bit the inside of her cheek and stared at the wall. He applied the coagulant, then pressed the dermal patch over the raw skin. When he finished, he leaned back on his heels and studied her face. Pale, sweating. Her breathing was shallow, but steady. "You need rest." "There isn't time." "Time for what?" She hesitated again. "They'll come looking for me. If any Dominion forces survive the bombardment, they'll scan for biosignatures, mine included. My genetics are encoded in every ship's search grid." "Do they know you're alive?" No, her voice was flat. "They assume I'm dead." "Then don't give them a reason to think otherwise," Ryan said. She looked at him again. "You're not reporting me." "No." "Why?" Her words hit hard. Not because of what she said, but how. There was no arrogance, no challenge. Just fear. "I'll do anything," she added. Her voice dropped. "I'll even warm your bed." Ryan froze. His training told him what this was: an attempt at psychological manipulation. Enemy combatants had used tactics like this before. Distract, disarm, kill. But something didn't add up. She didn't look like a fighter. Not anymore. Her armor was shredded, partially melted at the hip. Her left leg was swollen. She was limping, injured, exhausted. Her hair was tangled, her face streaked with ash. And her eyes, they weren't cold. They were tired, desperate. He scanned her again. No weapons. No transmitter. Still, he kept his weapon up. Name, he demanded. She hesitated, then said, Saraxa, daughter of Sovereign Kelrin of House Saraveth. He went still. Saraxa, princess of the Averii. She was supposed to be dead. Command had declared her missing in action during the orbital strike. Corporal Vance lay stretched out along the bench, pale and shivering, his breathing shallow but steady thanks to the stabilizer. Ryan sat near the door, rifle in his lap, constantly checking the bioscanner. Saraxa knelt beside the emergency heater, adjusting the settings with practiced hands. Her silence wasn't from fear anymore. It was focus. Ryan observed her movements, quietly noting how precise she was. Her injuries hadn't slowed her reflexes. Her behavior wasn't consistent with what Earth Intel described Averii royals to be: aloof, cold, raised for command but trained to avoid manual hardship. She didn't fit that mold. She wasn't what I expected, he muttered aloud, not realizing he'd spoken. What did you expect? Saraxa asked, glancing at him. Someone who tried to kill me. Or use me. You still think I won't? Ryan looked at her for a long moment. If that was your plan, you had a dozen chances. Saraxa didn't respond. She returned to adjusting the heater. You're being played. She saved my life, Ryan lied. And she didn't have to. Saraxa remained still, eyes locked on the injured man. I don't trust her, Vance muttered. You don't have to, Ryan said. But right now, we have to move you back to the bunker. They rigged a sled from the wreckage and pulled him back slowly. It took the better part of an hour. Saraxa didn't complain once. She carried half the weight. By the time they reached the hatch, she was soaked in sweat and blood that wasn't hers. Back inside, Vance collapsed against the wall, groaning. Ryan sealed the door and turned to her. Why didn't you run? She stared at him, exhausted. Because I said I wouldn't. Ryan didn't answer. He just stared at her. He was starting to believe her, and that scared him more than anything else. The bunker felt smaller with 3 people inside. The air was heavier, thick with tension and the smell of blood-soaked bandages. A soft glow illuminated her face, accentuating the small scars near her jaw, signs of past surgeries or training implants. Not cosmetic, military grade. Ryan stood, approached her slowly. You weren't just a diplomat, were you? I was trained for diplomacy, she replied evenly. But I was also trained to lead troops if diplomacy failed. Every royal is. It's not something we advertise. Makes us a threat to our own bloodlines. So, they left you behind because you were too dangerous politically. She met his eyes. Maybe. Or maybe I just stopped being useful. Ryan didn't like how familiar that sounded. He'd seen officers abandoned before. Men and women left behind after serving their purpose. The Federation wasn't perfect. No side in this war was. He turned back toward Vance, whose breathing had slowed. Is he stable? Saraxa asked. For now. He needs evac. We don't have long. We won't get a signal out from here. I know. There was a moment of silence. There it was, his own uncertainty, spoken aloud. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. Instead, she nodded slowly, as if she understood more than she let on. I was next in line to lead the Dominion's expansion fleet, she said quietly. My people trained me since I was old enough to hold a datapad. Diplomacy, command, military strategy, genetic supremacy. I believed in all of it. And now, she looked down. Now I don't know what I believe in. My fleet left without me. My father may already be dead. My empire, what's left of it, would kill me on sight if they knew I surrendered to a human. Ryan's jaw tightened. So you're as disposable to them as we are. She met his eyes again. Worse. I'm a failure. He didn't respond to that. There was no point. Hours passed. They shared a protein ration, barely enough for one, but they divided it without speaking. The mood remained heavy, but not hostile. As night's cycle approached, Ryan stood and gestured to the narrow bench. You should eat. Ryan tossed her the remaining half of the ration bar. You need it more. She broke in two and handed one piece back without a word. As they ate, Ryan checked the bioscanner again. The signal logs were empty. No drones, no life forms within a kilometer radius. But something didn't sit right. It had been too quiet. He cycled through his comm bands, but all channels returned static. "How much do you remember about the attack?" he asked. "Everything," she said. "We were attending a war council. 4 royal houses. My father was on the main cruiser. I stayed behind to finalize diplomatic terms with the Vekari clans. The Federation must have intercepted our movement schedule. The moment the shuttles launched, orbital strikes came down." Ryan nodded. "Makes sense. We had no confirmation of your presence planetside. Intel believed you were evacuated before the barrage." "No," she said. "They left me, either by mistake or intention." "You think they wanted you gone?" She didn't answer immediately. "My father ruled through legacy. But not everyone agreed with the line of succession. I was born through genetic fusion, part engineered, part natural. Some factions didn't see me as pure. It's possible this was a convenient opportunity." Ryan sat still, processing her words. "What were your actual orders before the attack?" "I was supposed to serve as diplomatic leverage, make contact with fringe species, expand through alliances where war wasn't required." She looked away. "Instead, I'm here, eating rations with an enemy who should have executed me." Ryan's jaw clenched. "I don't execute civilians. I'm not a civilian. Not anymore." The line between soldier and survivor was starting to blur. He knew that. He could see it in her eyes, too. She wasn't posturing anymore. No rehearsed rhetoric. No political tone. Just a woman, tired, injured, stranded. A sudden beeping cut through the quiet. The bioscanner pinged once. Then again. Just 2 people waiting for someone, anyone, to pull them out of the ashes. The stars over Valkaris had sharpened. Pinpoints of cold light stretched across a pitch-black sky. Somewhere above them, warships orbited in silence, too far to hear, too distant to see. But down here, the world felt carved out of stone and dust. The wind had died completely. The air was still. Ryan adjusted the power settings on his rifle and set it beside him. His armor's battery indicator blinked red, and the emergency power cell he carried was already drained from shielding Syraxa during the earlier exchange. They had an estimated 3 hours until evac. If the signal hadn't been jammed, if Earth Command hadn't changed protocols, if no one else found them first. He didn't trust those odds, but they were all he had. Inside the relay station, he and Syraxa had taken shelter in the only intact compartment, likely once a storage alcove. If the internal batteries survive the EMP wave, we can bypass the main processor. Ryan glanced back at the ridgeline they'd crossed. No movement, no drones, but something about the silence made his spine tighten. "We move fast," he said. "In and out. No lights. No unnecessary chatter." She nodded once. They climbed into the ruin through a cracked side panel. The inside was worse. Half of it had caved in, and the rest smelled of melted circuits and decayed wiring. Dead screens, broken consoles, and black scorch marks lined the control room. Ryan swept the area with his rifle. No signs of life. He motioned her forward. Syraxa dropped to one knee and pulled aside a metal access plate. Beneath it, the secondary interface still blinked faintly, one light pulsing slow and steady. "It's alive," she said. Ryan exhaled, barely audible. "Let's keep it that way." She connected a handheld device, an Averii signal bridge no larger than her palm, and began tapping commands. "Humanoid. Armed. Contact North Ridge." Syraxa dropped, pulling her sidearm. Ryan fired a suppressive burst through the breach. The enemy returned fire. Plasma bolts hissed against the wall, sending sparks and molten fragments across the room. "Averii, or scavengers?" he shouted. Syraxa peered through a gap in the wreckage. "Not mine. Their armor's mismatched. Local mercs, probably scavenging crash sites." "Perfect." Ryan fired again, forcing them back. He motioned to the side corridor. "Exit there. Flank left. We move on 3. Syraxa didn't question the order. She moved fast, low, as another blast rocked the outer wall. 3, 2, go. They split. Ryan dashed toward the entrance, drawing fire. Syraxa slipped through the side hallway and circled around. Seconds later, Gunfire erupted from her direction, controlled bursts. Ryan advanced on the confused attackers and took down two with precise headshots. The rest scattered. Ryan exhaled. Then let's find out. He didn't say it, but it was clear in his thoughts. If this worked, they might get out alive. If it didn't, they die far from anyone who gave a damn. Ryan crouched at the base of the ruined relay station, his fingers brushing against the cold, cracked casing of a half-buried control panel. Dust coated every surface. The Dominion's seal, once etched with precision, had been charred into near oblivion. Pieces of support scaffolding jutted from the collapsed roof like rusted spears. The station looked dead, but Saraxa was right. The orbital antenna was still upright, still angled to the stars. She stood beside him, scanning the structure with narrowed eyes. Her breath was slightly ragged from the hike, but she didn't show weakness. Not anymore. Her focus was sharp, movements deliberate. "There's a secondary interface below," she said, pointing to a collapsed section of floor near the comm array. The screen flashed with Dominion glyphs, then converted to a simplified grid. "I'll encrypt the signal in layers," she said. Dominion burst format, but buried under Earth-compliant packet headers. "You'll need to keep the transmission under 20 seconds. Anything longer risks triangulation." "Got it." As she worked, Ryan watched her carefully. Not just her hands, but her face. Her concentration. She wasn't acting. This wasn't deception. This was survival. "Why are you really helping me?" he asked quietly. She kept working, not looking up. "Because if your people find me with you, I'll have a chance to speak before they pull the trigger. If they find me alone, I'm dead before they ask questions." "That's not an answer." She paused, fingers hovering over the keypad. "I want the war to end. Not because I'm a pacifist. I'm not. But because I've seen what we both lose by dragging it on. You're not worried Earth will execute you anyway? I'm worried you'll decide that for them." She kept pace. After an hour, Ryan finally broke the silence. "Why did you really say that?" "In the beginning, in the ash. I'll warm your bed." She kept walking, but her voice was steady. "Because I thought that's what you expected to hear. I'd seen enough war captures. Some women survive by offering something other than resistance." Ryan looked at her sharply. "You thought I was that kind of soldier?" "No, but I wasn't sure, and I couldn't afford to be wrong." They walked in silence again for a while. Finally, Ryan said, "Next time, just tell me the truth." "I did," she said quietly. Eventually, they reached the ridge as the last light faded. Below, half covered in collapsed rock and sand, was the remains of the Dominion relay station. Ryan scanned it. No visible patrols. No power signals. "Looks dead," he said. Saraxa stepped up beside him, eyes focused. "Not entirely. That antenna's still angled for orbit. There might be a backup cell buried underneath." Ryan held her stare for a beat longer than necessary. Then he gave a small nod. "Fair." Saraxa finished the sequence. "Signal's ready. You transmit. I'll hold the encryption stable." He stepped forward, adjusted the receiver, and activated the mic. "Command, this is Echo 7-1. Down on Valkyris, 2 survivors. Repeat, 2 survivors. 1 Earth, 1 Dominion. Request immediate evac or relay to Fleet Command. Coordinates embedded. Static." Then a weak reply. "Echo 7-1, acknowledge. Signal received. Advise, repeat, 2 survivors." Ryan responded without hesitation. "Affirmative. 1 Dominion. Non combatant. Compliant. I'll explain on exfil." The transmission cut. The reply ended with a code ping, confirm _. They had been heard. Saraxa disconnected the bridge device and tucked it away. "We need to go. Now," she said. Ryan nodded and turned, just in time to see movement outside the shattered front wall. His rifle came up fast. A shape darted past. Then another. Dominion science allows for the selection of superior traits from donor lines. My birth was calculated, political, not personal. 2 houses fused a royal heir. I wasn't created to be loved. I was created to win." Ryan leaned forward. "And yet, here you are, disobeying your programming." "I've had time to think," she said. "Time my people never intended for me to have." There was something raw in her tone. Not anger. Something deeper. He sat with it for a while, then asked, "When did you start questioning them?" The day I watched a village burn because it refused to submit. My father called it containment. I called it something else. Ryan didn't reply. He didn't need to. They both knew the cost of following orders. I thought, she said quietly, that if I survived the bombardment, maybe I was meant to see things differently. You think survival means something? I don't know what else to believe in. Ryan leaned his head back against the wall. His muscles ached. The rear ramp lowered with a hydraulic hiss. Saraxa looked at the ship, then at Ryan. Will I see you again? Ryan didn't answer immediately. Then he gave a slight nod. You will. She nodded once, then stepped forward. No restraints. No guards. She boarded on her own. The soldiers followed. Ryan stood at the edge of the platform, watching the horizon, the dead moon, the broken sky, the end of everything that had brought them here. The ramp began to rise. Before the door sealed, Saraxa turned back one last time. Her eyes met his. No fear. No regret. Just understanding. When the hatch closed, Ryan sat back, helmet in his lap, staring at the dust swirling in the air. He'd followed his instincts. He'd broken protocol, and he didn't regret any of it. 3 weeks later, Earth orbit aboard ESS Vigilant. Ryan stood in the observation bay, watching the sunrise curve over the blue edge of Earth. The war was slowing. Not over, but cooling. A ceasefire was being drafted. His eyes burned from fatigue, but his mind wouldn't shut off. He looked over at her. How still she was, how carefully she held her posture despite the pain. You've been watching me, she said suddenly. I watch everyone. Not like that. He met her gaze, tired but unflinching. You want to talk about what you said back on the ash field? No, she replied. I want to talk about why you didn't act on it. He looked away. Because you didn't mean it. I did. Not the way you think. I meant that I didn't want to die alone. That if it took offering myself to stay alive, I'd do it. But that wasn't the only reason. He didn't speak. She shifted closer. Something changed when you looked at me, she said. You saw me. Not the enemy. Not the princess. Just a person. I didn't want to, but you did. The moment stretched. Her hand was inches from his. Not reaching. Just there. Like if either of them moved, the fragile space between would collapse. Ryan's voice was low. And this time, they weren't just defending a location. They were defending a choice. If they survived what came next, there'd be no more gray zones. No neutral ground. Ryan would have to decide whether Saraxa was a prisoner of war or was something else entirely. The ridge trembled with the first signs of approaching footsteps, and the clock was ticking. The approaching footsteps were light, swift, and too well-coordinated to be scavengers. Ryan raised his rifle and leaned out from the shattered entryway. Through the broken concrete and scattered debris, 2 humanoid shapes closed in from the west, moving tactically between cover. He raised the scanner again. Biosigns confirmed. Human. Federation talks. 2 soldiers, he said, stepping back into the shelter. Recon armor. Could be early evac scouts. Saraxa stayed silent, but alert, sidearm gripped low. She didn't assume safety. She knew better. Just like him. Within seconds, one of the soldiers reached the edge of the station. He didn't fire. He raised his hand, 2 fingers extended. Friendlies. Ryan responded with the same signal. Commander Hale, the lead soldier called out. Here, Ryan answered. 2 survivors. 1 Earth, 1 Dominion. Both accounted for. The second soldier stepped closer, eyes locking on Saraxa immediately. His hand hovered near his sidearm. She's the Dominion Royal, isn't she? He asked flatly. Yes, Ryan said without hesitation. She surrendered willingly. Unarmed. No hostelación. The soldier's eyes narrowed. Intel said she was dead. Intel was wrong. Behind him, Saraxa stood tall, gaze steady, face unreadable. She made no sudden movements. She didn't beg, didn't speak. The lead soldier activated his comm. Command, this is Recon Echo. We have visual on Hale and package. Confirmed Dominion Royal. Sending visual ID now. Ryan's stomach tightened. This was at the moment everything hinged on. If I let myself care, I can't do what comes next. What do you think comes next? I hand you over. They'll interrogate you, study you, maybe worse. And I'll have to watch it happen. She didn't flinch. Then don't hand me over. It's not that simple. It never is. He stood, pacing toward the doorway, looking out into the night. Every instinct in him was at war. Duty against decency, survival against something he hadn't felt in a long time. Connection. Then the bioscanner on his forearm chirped once. Fast movement. 2 signals. Approaching from the west. Someone's coming. Saraxa stood immediately, pain forgotten. Federation? No. Wrong movement pattern. Small. Fast. Either scouts or a vanguard. When not alone, he powered up his rifle again. She retrieved her weapon and pressed her back to the wall beside the door. What do? We hold, just like before. But he knew it wouldn't be like before. They were low on ammo. No more med gel. No backup. Terms still under negotiation. The capture and cooperation of Princess Saraxa had changed the tide of public opinion. She hadn't betrayed her people. She hadn't sold them out. But she'd testified, openly, honestly, about the internal power struggles, the propaganda, the engineered bloodlines. She had exposed the reality behind the enemy, showing they weren't so different after all. Ryan hadn't seen her since the debriefing. Until now. The door behind him opened. She stepped in, dressed in Earth civilian attire, gray utility jacket, black trousers. No armor. No insignia. Just her. You're early, he said, not turning. You knew I'd come? I hope. She came to stand beside him, gazing out at the planet below. What happens now, she asked. He looked at her. Whatever we want. She smiled. A dangerous answer. He smiled back. I know. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was quiet. Peaceful. Earned.